Every symbol you've ever dreamed, every myth that's ever moved you, every emotion that's ever caught you off guard, they all speak a hidden language older than time itself. It's a language not taught in schools, yet it's written in the fabric of your mind, beneath your thoughts, beneath your name, and even beneath your personal memories. There exists a deep psychological map, a design not just of your personality, but of your soul. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind. He dared to enter the sacred space where psychology meets meaning. He uncovered a reality where ancient symbols guide us, where darkness has wisdom, and where our greatest task in life isn't to be perfect, but to be whole. In a world obsessed with the surface, he pointed us toward the depths, to the dream, the myth, the shadow, the inner journey. And if you're willing to go there, to explore that terrain with open eyes and an honest heart, what you'll discover is not just knowledge, but transformation. Carl Jung believed that to truly understand human behavior, we have to go far beneath the surface of everyday thoughts and actions. According to him, the human mind isn't just a collection of conscious memories or learned behaviors. It's a layered system, like an iceberg, where most of its mass remains hidden underwater. This hidden part, Jung said, holds the key to why we think, feel, and behave the way we do. His model of the psyche, or the total personality, is the foundation for all his psychological theories. Jung divided the psyche into three main layers: the conscious mind, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. At the top is the conscious mind, the part we're aware of. It's the voice in your head you're familiar with, the one that makes decisions, solves problems, and experiences the world. But Jung warned us not to be fooled by its visibility. He believed the conscious mind was only a small part of who we are, a tip of the iceberg. Below the conscious mind lies the personal unconscious. This includes forgotten memories, experiences we've repressed, and feelings we've chosen to ignore. While this layer is individual and shaped by personal life experiences, it still deeply influences how we behave, even when we don't realize it. For instance, someone might develop a fear of rejection because of a painful childhood memory, even if they no longer consciously remember it. These buried elements don't disappear. They become emotional undercurrents that guide how we interact with the world. But Jung's most groundbreaking idea came with his theory of the collective unconscious. Unlike Freud, who believed the unconscious was mostly a dumping ground for unwanted thoughts, Jung saw it as a sacred reservoir, a shared psychological inheritance passed down through generations. He believed that all human beings are born with a set of deep-seated symbolic patterns, or archetypes, embedded in their psyche. These archetypes are not learned through culture or education. They exist within us from birth, much like the instinct to walk or speak. The collective unconscious, then, is not personal. It's universal. It's the reason why people from vastly different cultures can still tell stories with the same themes: heroes, mentors, monsters, rebirth, betrayal, and transformation. These recurring symbols and motifs exist because they come from the same inner source. They are built into the architecture of the human mind, regardless of where we come from. Jung saw these inner patterns as guiding forces. He didn't view them as random or chaotic, but as meaningful and purposeful. In his view, symbols from the unconscious, especially those appearing in dreams, myths, and religious experiences, were not illusions or fantasies, but messages from the deeper parts of the self. They are the psyche's way of communicating what the conscious mind needs to hear. To Jung, the psyche wasn't something broken that needed to be fixed, as some approaches to psychology suggest. Instead, he believed that every individual is born with a complete inner map, a blueprint for growth, wholeness, and integration. However, this map is mostly invisible to us. The journey of life, he believed, is about gradually uncovering that map and aligning ourselves with it. That process requires not just thinking, but feeling, imagining, reflecting, and engaging with the symbolic world that the unconscious presents. This is why Jung gave so much importance to things like dreams, art, religion, and mythology. In his eyes, these weren't just cultural artifacts. They were expressions of the deeper mind, a way to glimpse into what lies beneath the surface. He believed that by paying attention to these symbols, we can begin to understand ourselves more fully and live in a way that's authentic and whole. In the end, Jung's vision of the psyche is like a hidden blueprint of the soul, a sacred design that includes our conscious identity, our buried memories, and a universal layer that connects us to all of humanity. To understand human behavior, he argued, we must go inward, into the unknown, into the mythic, into the symbolic. That's where the truth lies. That's where the soul speaks. Carl Jung introduced the idea of the collective unconscious as one of the most revolutionary concepts in psychology. To understand human behavior in its deepest form, Jung argued, we must recognize that we are not just shaped by our personal experiences, but also by something much older, deeper, and shared by all humans, a vast inner world inherited from generations before us. He called this the collective unconscious, a term that still fascinates psychologists, philosophers, and spiritual thinkers today. The collective unconscious is not the same as the personal unconscious. While the personal unconscious is filled with forgotten or repressed memories, unique to each individual, the collective unconscious contains universal structures and experiences common to all people throughout history. Imagine it like the spiritual DNA of humanity, a library of inner patterns that all humans are born with, regardless of their culture, language, or time period. According to Jung, the collective unconscious is filled with what he called archetypes, ancient, recurring symbols or images that exist across cultures. These aren't learned through books or society. They are built into the human mind, hardwired from birth. They appear in dreams, myths, fairy tales, religious rituals, and art, revealing themselves again and again in the same forms: the hero, the mother, the trickster, the wise old man, the shadow, the child, and more. Think about it. Even in cultures that never came into contact with each other, people still tell stories about a brave hero fighting evil, a mysterious wise guide, or a mother figure who nurtures and protects. Why? Jung believed it's because we all share the same internal blueprint. These recurring themes are not coincidences. They are expressions of the collective unconscious working through our minds. For Jung, the collective unconscious wasn't just a passive part of the psyche. It was alive, active, and deeply influential. He believed that when people feel lost, anxious, or stuck in life, it's often because they are disconnected from this deeper layer of their being. They are cut off from the source of meaning, purpose, and psychological balance. This is why symbols, especially those that arise in dreams or spiritual experiences, are so important. They act as bridges between the unconscious and the conscious, offering guidance from the soul's deepest wisdom. Jung observed that many people in modern society suffer because they try to live only in the outer world of logic, material success, and social roles. They ignore the symbolic life, the world of the imagination, intuition, and inner exploration. But the collective unconscious continues to speak whether we listen or not. It may show up in dreams, in sudden emotional reactions, or in a deep longing for something we can't name. If ignored, this voice can turn into anxiety, depression, or a sense of emptiness. If embraced, it can lead to healing, creativity, and self-discovery. Jung also believed that many personal struggles are really symbolic conflicts with the collective unconscious. For example, someone constantly seeking approval may not just be dealing with personal insecurity. They might be wrestling with the archetype of the persona, the mask we wear to please others. Or someone afraid of confrontation may be running from their shadow, the part of themselves they've rejected. Understanding these patterns can bring powerful insight and transformation. The collective unconscious also explains why people are often drawn to certain religions, stories, or symbols. These systems resonate because they echo the inner structures of the psyche. Jung didn't see religion as just superstition. He saw it as humanity's symbolic language for the inner world. He believed that even modern people, living in cities and surrounded by technology, still need myths. Not childish fairy tales, but meaningful stories that reflect their inner journey. In this sense, Jung wasn't just offering a psychological theory, he was giving us a spiritual map. The collective unconscious reminds us that we are more than isolated individuals. We are part of a timeless human story with roots that go far deeper than memory. We carry within us the wisdom of ancestors, the echoes of ancient civilizations, and the dreams of people we've never met. This inner world is rich, mysterious, and sacred. By learning to listen to it through dreams, meditation, art, or deep reflection, we begin to understand who we really are, not just as personalities shaped by our past, but as souls shaped by the entire human journey. Jung believed that by reconnecting with the collective unconscious, we don't just heal ourselves, we reconnect with the soul of the world. Carl Jung believed that inside each of us lives a hidden cast of characters, ancient, powerful, and symbolic figures that influence our thoughts, emotions, dreams, and behaviors. He called them archetypes. These are not people or personalities, but timeless psychological patterns that shape how we experience life. Jung compared them to the organs of the soul, universal templates that live in the collective unconscious and are expressed through human behavior in every culture, age, and individual life. To understand archetypes, think of them as invisible lenses through which we interpret our world. When we feel the need to protect someone, the mother archetype might be active. When we are driven to take risks, the hero may be at play. When we feel drawn to mystery or spirituality, the wise old man or the mystic might be speaking. These are not roles we consciously choose. They are inner forces that emerge naturally, especially during important phases of life or emotional experiences. One of the most important archetypes is the self, not to be confused with the ego or our surface identity. The self represents the totality of who we are, both conscious and unconscious. It is the true center of the psyche, and Jung saw it as the guiding force behind the journey of life. It calls us toward wholeness, helping us integrate all the other parts of our personality. Jung believed the self often appears in dreams or visions as a symbol, a circle, a mandala, a wise figure, guiding us back to our inner truth. Another key archetype is the persona, the mask we wear to face the world. It's the role we play in society, shaped by expectations and norms. It helps us fit in, communicate, and function socially. But if we over-identify with the persona, when we forget that it's just a mask, we risk becoming hollow, disconnected from our true feelings. Many people become trapped in their persona, mistaking their job, status, or reputation for their identity. Beneath the persona lies the shadow, perhaps the most misunderstood of all archetypes. The shadow holds the parts of ourselves we don't want to face, our fears, desires, impulses, and insecurities. But it's not just bad traits. It can also contain positive qualities we've rejected out of fear, like creativity, courage, or power. Jung believed that ignoring the shadow leads to psychological imbalance. Facing it, however, can lead to profound growth and self-acceptance. The shadow often appears in dreams as dark figures, monsters, or threatening situations. Jung said that the more we run from the shadow, the stronger it becomes. Then there's the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine aspects within each person. For Jung, every man carries an inner anima, a feminine image that influences his feelings, relationships, and imagination. Every woman carries an animus, a masculine counterpart that shapes her sense of logic, strength, and inner authority. These are not about gender roles, but about inner balance. A man connected to his anima becomes more emotionally aware and creative. A woman connected to her animus becomes more assertive and independent. These archetypes often appear in dreams as lovers, muses, or idealized figures. The hero is another central archetype. This figure represents the part of us that faces challenges, confronts danger, and strives for transformation. Every person must at some point go through a hero's journey, confronting hardship, entering the unknown, battling fears, and returning stronger. The hero teaches us resilience, bravery, and the need for inner adventure. Other archetypes include the trickster, who brings chaos and unpredictability, often forcing growth through disruption. The child, who represents innocence, new beginnings, and potential. The great mother, a dual figure of nurture and destruction. And the wise old man or woman, who symbolizes deep guidance and insight. These archetypes are not chosen. They arise naturally. Sometimes we are aware of them. Other times they operate in the background. They appear in our dreams, relationships, crises, and creative work. Jung believed that becoming conscious of these inner figures is essential for psychological development. When we understand which archetypes are active in our lives, we begin to understand why we behave the way we do, not just on the surface, but from the deepest levels of the psyche. More importantly, these archetypes show us that life isn't random. There's meaning behind our experiences. Every struggle, every emotion, every attraction or fear might be a message from one of these inner characters, trying to help us grow. Jung's view was clear. The psyche is a drama, a symbolic theater, where archetypes play their roles to help us awaken to our true selves. Carl Jung once said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." For him, dreams weren't meaningless or random. They were rich with symbols, messages, and truths sent from the unconscious to help guide us through life. Jung believed that dreams and symbols form the language of the soul. When we learn to interpret them, we open up a direct channel to our inner world, the part of us that knows more than we consciously do. Unlike Freud, who believed dreams mostly reflect repressed desires, Jung believed dreams are purposeful and intelligent. They don't just show us what we're avoiding, they show us what we need to see. Every symbol in a dream, no matter how strange or dramatic, is like a letter in an alphabet. Each one points towards something happening inside us. Imagine the unconscious as a vast, ancient landscape. Dreams are how that landscape communicates with us. They use images, metaphors, and patterns to express ideas our conscious mind can't fully grasp. These images don't follow logic, they follow meaning. For example, dreaming of water might symbolize emotion, the unconscious, or renewal. A journey might represent a transition in life. A house might represent the self. These symbols often appear repeatedly in people's dreams, across time and cultures, because they arise from the collective unconscious. Jung emphasized that dream interpretation isn't about applying fixed meanings. There is no one-size-fits-all dictionary. Instead, each dream symbol must be understood in the context of the individual's life, emotions, and current psychological state. A snake, for instance, could mean fear, danger, transformation, or healing, depending on the dreamer. That's why Jung's method of dream interpretation was more of an art than a science. It required intuition, reflection, and deep self-awareness. Jung noticed that dreams often use archetypal images, those ancient patterns we discussed earlier. These include the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the great mother, and others. When such figures appear in dreams, it often signals that something profound is unfolding inside the psyche. For example, meeting a dark, threatening figure in a dream might be an invitation to face your shadow, the part of yourself you've denied or repressed. Seeing a beautiful guide might signal the presence of your anima or animus, helping you grow through inner balance. One of Jung's key insights was the idea that the unconscious isn't just random noise. It's an intelligent force that tries to bring us into balance. If we've become too focused on work and external success, our dreams might pull us inward, showing us neglected emotions or forgotten passions. If we're avoiding a painful truth, a dream might present it in symbolic form, asking us to confront it. Dreams can act like spiritual mirrors, reflecting the parts of ourselves we aren't yet ready to see during waking life. Jung also explored how symbols appear not just in dreams, but in myths, religious traditions, fairy tales, and even spontaneous visions. He called this process active imagination, a technique where one deliberately engages with inner symbols through creative expression, writing, drawing, or dialogue with dream figures. This was Jung's way of entering into a conversation with the unconscious, allowing the inner world to speak in its own voice. Jung believed that symbols have the power to heal because they help us integrate split parts of ourselves. In psychological terms, we are often fragmented. One part of us wants freedom, another wants safety. One part longs for love, another fears intimacy. Symbols help bring these opposites together. They unify the conscious and unconscious by creating a bridge between the two. This is why Jung considered symbols sacred. They weren't just decorations of the mind. They were invitations to transformation. In everyday life, we encounter symbols in subtle ways, through music, poetry, art, intuition, and even moments of déjà vu or synchronicity. Jung believed that the universe often speaks to us symbolically, especially during moments of crisis, change, or growth. A symbol might appear as a recurring dream, a repeated image, or a powerful inner feeling that won't go away. These are not coincidences, they are messages from the soul. Ultimately, Jung taught that by listening to our dreams and learning to work with symbols, we become more connected to our true selves. We begin to see that our inner world is alive, dynamic, and full of wisdom. The more we engage with that world, the more we grow, not just mentally, but spiritually. Dreams aren't interruptions of sleep. They're sacred messages from within. And when we learn to read their language, we begin to understand the deepest truth of Jung's psychology, that the soul is always speaking. We just have to learn how to listen. Every human being carries a hidden side, a darker twin that follows us wherever we go. It doesn't appear in the mirror, yet it shapes our fears, reactions, judgments, and sometimes even our deepest pain. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains all the traits, emotions, and desires we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. But Jung didn't see the shadow as something evil. Instead, he saw it as misunderstood and rejected. Not a monster to be destroyed, but a lost part of the soul that longs to be integrated. The shadow is created when we begin to push certain parts of ourselves out of awareness. From a young age, we learn which behaviors are accepted and which are not, from our families, schools, and society. If a child is told not to be angry, aggressive, loud, or emotional, they may begin to hide those traits, burying them deep inside. These suppressed parts don't vanish. They become part of the shadow, the dark side that lives in the unconscious and eventually influences how we act, often without us realizing it. But the shadow doesn't only hold what's bad. Jung emphasized that the shadow can also contain qualities that are positive, creative, or powerful. Parts of ourselves we've hidden due to fear, shame, or trauma. For example, someone might hide their ambition because they were raised to be humble, or deny their sexuality because of cultural beliefs. These repressed parts wait silently in the dark, affecting relationships, dreams, emotions, and self-esteem until they are brought into the light. The danger of the shadow lies in its unconscious nature. What we refuse to face within ourselves, we often project onto others. Jung called this shadow projection. If we deny our own selfishness, we might see others as greedy. If we suppress our own anger, we may constantly attract angry people. The traits we reject in ourselves are often the same traits that irritate or trigger us in others. Shadow projection can damage relationships, fuel conflict, and prevent personal growth. Because instead of owning our flaws, we blame the world around us. This is why Jung believed that facing the shadow is one of the most important tasks in psychological development. He didn't suggest we fix or erase the shadow. That's impossible. Instead, he encouraged us to bring it into consciousness, to recognize it, listen to it, and learn from it. This is called shadow work, the process of becoming aware of the parts of ourselves we've disowned and making peace with them. It requires honesty, humility, and a deep commitment to self-awareness. Shadow work often begins with discomfort, moments where we overreact emotionally, feel ashamed, jealous, or defensive. Jung believed these emotional spikes are clues from the unconscious. The stronger the reaction, the more likely it is that the shadow is involved. Paying attention to dreams can also reveal shadow material. Dark figures, dangerous animals, or threatening scenes are often symbolic expressions of repressed emotions or rejected parts of ourselves. Meeting the shadow is not easy. It's uncomfortable, even painful, but Jung believed it's absolutely necessary for growth. Without integrating the shadow, a person remains split, living only a partial version of themselves. They wear a mask of goodness or control on the outside, while their repressed impulses leak out in destructive ways, through anger, addiction, dishonesty, or depression. Jung often said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, real healing and self-understanding come not from avoiding the shadow, but by turning toward it, by being willing to ask, what am I hiding? What am I afraid to admit about myself? What qualities do I criticize in others that I may carry within? The beauty of the shadow is that when we face it, we begin to reclaim power. We realize that we are more than our mask, more than our persona. We are complex, contradictory, and full of untapped energy. When we integrate the shadow, we stop projecting, stop fearing ourselves, and become more whole. We develop compassion, not only for others, but for our own inner struggles. The anger becomes assertiveness. The fear becomes caution. The jealousy becomes motivation. In many spiritual traditions, darkness is not the opposite of light. It is the doorway to it. Jung's view of the shadow mirrors this truth. The parts of ourselves we fear the most often hold the key to our transformation. The more we run from the shadow, the more it controls us. But when we face it, listen to it, and embrace it, we begin to heal, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming real. Carl Jung believed that the highest goal of life isn't success, happiness, or even peace. It's wholeness. To Jung, being whole means becoming the complete version of yourself. Not just the person you present to the world, but someone who has embraced every hidden part of their soul. He called this lifelong journey individuation. It's the process of discovering who you truly are beneath the masks, the roles, and the expectations, and uniting all the different parts of your psyche into one harmonious whole. Individuation isn't about becoming someone else or trying to be better. It's about returning to yourself, your most authentic, original self that's often buried under layers of conditioning, fear, and denial. It begins when you realize that your conscious personality, the you that makes everyday choices, is only a small part of the full picture. Beneath the surface, your unconscious mind holds enormous wisdom, and it wants to help you grow. The process of individuation involves bringing the unconscious into consciousness. That means listening to your dreams, noticing your projections, exploring your inner symbols, and confronting the shadow. It means paying attention to what bothers you about others, what fears you run from, and what truths you've been ignoring. Each time you face something uncomfortable in yourself and choose to understand it rather than avoid it, you take a step toward becoming more whole. Jung described the psyche as a system seeking balance. Just like the body heals a wound naturally, the psyche tries to restore harmony. But this healing often requires conflict first, a tension between opposites. For example, if you've spent your life being extremely logical and disciplined, you may begin to feel drawn toward creativity, spontaneity, or spirituality. At first, this feels confusing or threatening, but it's your unconscious trying to restore the balance. Individuation often begins with this kind of inner struggle. It asks you to expand beyond who you think you are. This path is not easy. Individuation often involves periods of confusion, self-doubt, and inner conflict. But Jung believed these are signs of real growth, not weakness. The discomfort we feel when confronting our inner world is actually a doorway. On the other side is a stronger, wiser version of ourselves. Not perfect, but real. A person who is no longer split between who they are and who they pretend to be. One of the most important aspects of individuation is the integration of archetypes. As you grow, different archetypal energies appear within you. The hero, the child, the shadow, the anima, animus, the wise old man or woman. Each of these figures offers a lesson, a challenge, or a gift. The hero helps you find courage. The shadow helps you embrace truth. The anima or animus helps you connect to emotional or logical depth. The self, which stands at the center of the psyche, draws all of these parts into unity. Jung believed that the self is like a magnet, silently pulling you toward your potential. It's the deep inner guide that knows who you're meant to become. But to hear it, you must become quiet. You must turn inward, listen to your dreams, follow your intuition, and allow space for symbols and synchronicities to speak. Often the self appears in dreams as a powerful image, a wise figure, a sacred circle, a divine child, or a radiant light. These are signs that you're touching something sacred within yourself. Individuation also leads to a deeper connection with life itself. As you become more whole, you begin to feel more meaning in everyday existence. You realize that even your struggles had a purpose. They were shaping you. You stop chasing validation from outside sources and begin trusting your inner compass. You see that your life has a story, not random events, but a narrative filled with patterns, symbols, and growth. This journey doesn't end in youth or middle age. It continues throughout the entire lifespan. In fact, Jung believed the second half of life is where individuation becomes most important. After years of building a career, raising a family, or fulfilling social roles, the soul begins to ask deeper questions. Who am I beyond these roles? What is my purpose now? What is my relationship with death, with spirit, with eternity? These questions are not signs of crisis. They are signs of awakening. In the end, individuation is not a luxury for the few. It is the natural path for every human soul. It doesn't mean escaping the world or becoming someone new. It means becoming fully, deeply, and unapologetically yourself. It means honoring the light and the dark within you. It means stepping into your story, not as a victim or a mask, but as the true author of your life. Jung called this the privilege of a lifetime, to become who you truly are, and that journey, though challenging, is the most meaningful path a person can walk.